It's what. Hello, I'm Lisa, an artist, 2D animator, and full of anime rage.
Hello, I'm Winnie, an illustrator, designer, and a sucker for family-themed stories.
Welcome to Heart to Hato,
a podcast where two friends have a heart-to-heart about anime.
So, today we are talking about Mamoru Hosoda.
Yes,
he
sort of
is
overview his work.
Yes, he's a director that I'm sure many people have heard of. He's directed things such as Wolf Children, Mirai to Mirai, or Mirai no Mirai? Mirai, whatever.
Mirai. Everyone,
Mirai.
yeah, just the Mirai.
Everyone does Mirai. The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, and also, let's see, Summer Wars. What else did he do? Gotta look through my notes. I made notes for this.
And his two sort of like, how would you say, franchise feature films, the Digimon movie, and apparently did a One Piece film. But he's mostly known for his like big feature as director for his, I wouldn't say they're his own original stories, because as we will talk about some of them, they are adaptations of other things, but yeah, that's sort of like what he's known for, as mostly a director of such anime films.
I have something I need to say. Something I need to say. I started that intro off a little shaky because I'm full of anime rage, like I said at the top of the episode.
So Lisa has let me know that through our little bit of amateur's research for this episode, she's untapped into a new reserve of anime rage that I think I have yet to fully understand. Why I'm very intrigued, as I'm sure you audience members are as well, about Lisa's really hot takes.
Okay. So before I go into that, let me just do like a really quick, spicy little history lesson with Hosoda's career. All right. So he's an art student. I think he graduated with a major in oil painting. But he saw this Ghibli film, Lupin the Third, Castle of Cagliostro, a great film, by the way. And he wants to go into animation, which is great. He applies to Ghibli, he gets rejected, that's okay. He goes to Toei Animation. He impresses Ghibli by doing this really great Digimon feature. And then eventually he gets accepted by Ghibli to direct Howl's Moving Castle, which is crazy. That we could have a version of that film directed by him and not Miyazaki. But eventually he gets fired. He has creative differences with Ghibli. And
ooh, that is very spicy.
That is spicy drama. And the fact that he was able to walk away from that and just keep trucking on his own creative vision with his films, that's great. So that's why I have to say, please stop comparing Hosoda to Miyazaki. Please stop doing this. Western critics, I've noticed, are in love with doing this. They love calling Hosoda the heir apparent, the next step to the new Miyazaki. Listen.
Oh, I hate when people do that in general.
It's awful.
I mean, if anything, that specifically really shows that he is the antithesis of the new Miyazaki, because he literally left from the Studio Ghibli from creative differences with Miyazaki. They obviously don't agree on so many artistic points that they refuse to even work with each other anymore.
Exactly. Like, listen, I understand that maybe he was inspired to get into animation because of Miyazaki's work, but when he actually got in there with him and started doing the film, supposedly Ghibli was requesting him that he do it in Miyazaki's style. But he wanted to do it in his style. He wanted to do it in his unique vision that he wanted to communicate. And you know what? He left and he made his own studio and he did his own projects.
Props to him.
And for that, I would say, stop flattening the beautiful and diverse scope of anime feature films by making this comparison. It feels very icky.
Yeah, absolutely. And even as we'll discuss today, we do have a lot of criticisms for Hosoda's work, but what we can definitely give to him is he very much has his own style. He's doing his own thing, and whether you like it or not, I think there's a lot of respect to be had for his team and what he's created and what he will create. I'm, very optimistic for a lot of future things that we'll be able to see from that studio, Chizu, as well. So
and I will also say,
yes.
I'm sorry, the concept of like a new Miyazaki, we need to make another film that's like Miyazaki, is what is actually dragging down anime films today. Don't ask for a new Miyazaki. Let's let new talent.
Have we seen Mary and the Witch's Flower? You wanted more Miyazaki, right? Then you got Mary and the Witch's Flower, which is just gross discount Ghibli. Like, let people do other things. Have a variety of stuff in the animation field. Ghibli's put out lots of films, and they're going to continue putting out more. But not every studio has to make stuff reminiscent of what they made. What is the point of the industry if everything's just going to start looking the same?
Yeah, and it's like it happened here in the Western animation industry. Like everyone wants to be the next Disney, and then it just dilutes animation into this one genre fringe. Like it's all for kids, and it's all musicals, and they all have big eyes, and they're all have snatched waists and whatever. I don't know. I'm mad. I hate it. Stop doing that. I understand why reviewers feel like, especially Western reviewers, feel like this is an apt comparison for viewers who might not understand anime as much or want to find more anime feature films, and name-dropping Miyazaki is an easy way to convince them to go watch Hosoda's work. I get it, but God, it makes me so mad. Anyways, I'm sorry. We can get into the content of his work and stuff. Sorry for my phone. But I just,
This
hate
episode
that.
is starting off with a lot of chaotic energy. No, those are completely legitimate concerns and angers to have, Lisa. I'm mad hearing that because I didn't know about that drama with Howl's Moving Castle, but that, and now, also commenting about the fact that so many Western reviewers are so quick to just name drop Miyazaki. I mean, this is not even just within animation industry in general. It's just a thing that I've always had a gripe with. Like, I used to be really into Kyari Pamu for her, like crazy fashion and her like upbeat music. And the number of times people were like, she's a Japanese Katy Perry, I would be like, who's saying that? I'm going to hose you down. Like, shut your mouth. She's not Japanese Katy Perry. Shut up.
That is an absolutely cursed comparison.
That is disgusting.
Katy Perry wore that like super appropriative outfit that one time for her performance, where it was like a Chinese dress mixed with a kimono.
And didn't she have like Egyptian wear in one of her videos? I don't know. I don't keep up with Katy Perry, but that's just one other example in just the sea full of millions of droplets of examples of such comparisons that I just absolutely hate. I mean, there's an extra layer of your like the white people, the West is the prime example of everything else. So like something that comes from another part of the world, such as Asia, you're like, you're like the Asian version of this white person, which in this case of what we're talking about with Hosoda and Miyazaki, they're both Japanese, so it doesn't have that layer, but it's still frustrating nonetheless, because it's like you're taking away the integrity of someone's artistic identity just because you want like a quick comparison for whatever reason, whether it is that you want it to be quote unquote more accessible to audiences, or you just want to drop names. I don't know. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, don't compare Hosoda's apple to Miyazaki's orange. They're just different.
Exactly. There we go.
And
on that note,
they have similar themes in some respects. Like I get it. Like you're not used to watching anime or Japanese media, and you see Hosoda kind of like do these like lingering shots where he focuses on little details, and you're like, wow, it's just like Miyazaki, it's just in the moment, small things. But it's like that's kind of a trait of Japanese media in general. It's not really Miyazaki.
I was gonna say.
Anyways, I'm sorry. I have to get it off my chest. Stop doing this. In a way, it's a little bit
It's
don't know,
demeaning.
it feels gross. Japanese people, Japanese animators they're not the same. Let's respect their human story, their individuality.
Yeah. And if there's any indication, we're going to do probably more of these overview of maybe studios or specific directors or whatnot in the future. And Lisa and I have very differing opinions for a lot of them. So if that's also any other indication or evidence that they're not all the same.
Yeah.
We love some and we kind of really hate others. So they all have their own distinctive style and the way that they tell stories. Also, what kind of stories they choose to tell. That is a big one for me. But yes, on that note, shall we actually go into an overview of Hosoda's work?
Absolutely.
Today. Yeah.
So. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it is one thing that is nice about talking about his films, like if you want to kind of put the Digimon and One Piece thing to the side because they're films for, other big existing anime franchises, the films that he's done as director, it's kind of like, it's like a cozy, nice, snatched collection. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 that he's done so far, with Bell coming out sometime in 2021.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So it's interesting that he moved on from Howl's Moving Castle right into The Girl Who Left Through Time. And I know that you have your own opinions about the film. And
I do.
I was going to agree with them, but it's been a while since I watched the film, and I refreshed on a few clips, and I don't know, I'm a little bit endeared to it now. I don't know.
So, unfortunately, this is going to be characteristic of a lot of the films that we talk about today. At least for me, we did review sort of the plot summaries and looked at some of the shots to jog our memory, but I have a hard time remembering the plot of most of Hosoda's films, even though I did really like some at the time and also really disliked others at the time, which is so interesting that they can leave an impression of really feeling endeared to them or not liking them, but then after a while you just can't remember what happened, which is that's so interesting. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, I think with The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, looking at some of the stuff that actually happened in the film, artistically, it looks great. It's like a really well done film. I think my main gripes for this film is really the story, the plot, and the way that it's told. Some fun facts that I didn't actually know about until I read into this a little bit researching for this episode was that as his first film being director, I don't know if he just didn't feel confident telling an original story yet or whatnot, but this is actually a kind of adaptation of a novel by Yasutaka Tsutsui, who also wrote Paprika, which Satoshi Kon adapted into a very famous anime movie. But to say that it's an adaptation is kind of like a misnomer. I read somewhere on the internet that maybe you can consider it a spiritual sequel, because the way that it's done in the film is that Makoto, I think Makoto might be an original character, same with Chiaki and probably some of the other characters, but in the original novel, the aunt, Kazuko, is the main character, and she kind of has like, they basically mirror each other in terms of their storylines. Like, they both have experiences with time jumps, coming from the same family, and they both fall in love with a time traveler and have this fear about what they could be as adults, what they should have done or whatnot. And I found some stuff specifically on this vlog by a person named Violocean. I am not sure how to pronounce their name. But they wrote that knowing the source of inspiration for the film and consequently knowing a minimum of Tsutsui's writing style allows the viewer to have a clear understanding of Hosoda's film, because apparently in Tsutsui's writing, he uses science fiction element only to kind of give color to his works. He does it in a more superficial sense, while the psychology of his main characters are really the heart of his works. And in Hosoda's film, this is kind of, if you view it that way, kind of it remains intact and sort of is a mirror of that. So that is just like a little brief background history about sort of The Girl Who Leapt Through Time's inspiration and its source material. But after I read what this person, I'm so sorry, however you pronounce it, I'm probably butchering it, but what they wrote, I'm glad I read their sort of analysis and sort of writing about the background of the story, because it gave me some information that I think, because I didn't know, it left some context out for me. And how would I say, I don't know if I've become more favorable to the film, but at least I understand those parts now.
Sure, yeah. I'm a little bit interested in your take, whether or not the psychology of the protagonist actually comes through in this film.
All right, okay. I'm just gonna go into it, because if there's any film that I have probably the strongest feelings about, is Girl Who Leapt Through Time, because everybody loves it as the Hosoda film. Oh my god, it's amazing. I love this one. And when I watched it, the moment I finished it, I was just like, that's it? This thing? Really? And, I made that disclaimer of, unfortunately, I don't remember a lot of the specific plot intricacies of Hosoda's films. I don't know how he just manages to do that. Like, I think Lisa also talked about that a little bit. We have a hard time remembering a lot of the specific things that happen.
Right.
But based on sort of reviewing the plot, and just based on how I remember feeling and a few specific things I can remember, some of the biggest gripes I had was, yes, there was an interesting premise with the time travel aspect, but the protagonist was just way too obnoxious for me. And my biggest gripe plot-wise was the shoehorn romance, because it felt as if all of the time traveling gimmick was just in service for these two high schoolers to like fall in love, and that just does not do it for Winnie as a storyline.
Sure.
I mean, I think time travel in itself...
On my end, I think we both come down quite hard on shoehorned romance and superficial romance in general. And while I was reviewing the film, I had completely forgotten about the romantic aspects of the film, even though it's the focus of it. What I had remembered was the protagonist doing selfish things with her ability to time travel. I know that you interpreted it in a way that she came across as very obnoxious, but while I was rewatching clips, I actually kind of found it endearing. She was very annoying, but she was very much her age. And in that sense, that's what put me off of the romance even more. Because she was so much of a child in this film. She had so many flaws. She had to work on herself. Like, she was abusing this power that she just got. She didn't feel ready for a relationship. She didn't feel mature enough for it. It felt weird to me as well.
Yeah. And, commenting on that aspect, I kind of feel unfavorable on either end. On the one hand, I think this is definitely coming from my personal bias, because, quote unquote, I was the kid my whole life that other people said I was mature for my age. Whatever. I don't know what that did to my psyche. But even still, knowing that people of her age, when you're in high school, you're not like a full-fledged adult yet. You've lived in a microcosmic world where everyone else is your age. You go to school every day, and you're all silly, and you're young, and you do dumb things. But even with that knowledge, I'm like, she's still kind of topping the cake for me, which I'm like, I feel that often with a lot of like anime protagonists when they're high schoolers. They seem to be even younger than their supposed age. I'm like, what person in high school is actually that like obnoxious and would, if they found out they had time traveling abilities, would use it for such frivolous things? Because isn't it just like a general knowledge within the cultural conscience that when you time travel, there can be consequences? And in the film, there is that marker on her arm that kind of counts down each time that she uses it. And I don't remember exactly how it's dealt with, but I was like, did she see that? And then still kept thinking, whatever, I'll keep doing it to like sleep an extra hour in, because I don't know. Anyway, but that's kind of like
it built off this idea of her becoming more aware that this power was very, very serious, and like it was sort of, there was this whole plot of like her childhood friend dying because he took a bike
that part was
that she
serious.
that was faulty, and she had to use her powers to make sure that didn't happen. And I'm endeared to the idea that she has like this bratty personality where she gradually matures as she realizes this power that she has is very important. And at the end of the film, the very end of the film, I was kind of endeared to it at the end, to be honest. Like,
she becomes a painting restorer so they can meet again. Haha.
Wait, does
so
that
romantic.
happen? Oh, fuck.
Yeah, that's
well,
what's
actually,
implied.
I take it back.
Oh, really?
Well, I remember. Okay, I thought at the end she was just like, I stares off into the sky, like, I'm just gonna keep moving ahead with my life with a restored knowledge of like the importance of every moment and time and all this stuff. But I didn't know she was like endeavoring to meet the guy again.
Well, there's, I think it's a situation of both can be true at the same time, where what you just said, I guess there is an aspect of that, but she also is promising like, I'm going to follow the, okay, here's my other side gripe, okay? This, I guess Hosoda was like, okay, I don't want to do a one-to-one adaptation. I want to put my own flair. So this is like, quote unquote, a spiritual sequel, right? Where there's original characters and it's not just a one-to-one copy of what happens in the novel. But Makoto was basically the same character as her aunt, and Ken, who her aunt Kazuko falls in love with in the original novel, is just Chiaki. It is literally the same thing as, I was like, Hosoda, what are you doing? Like, you literally just did the story, the exact same story again, because Kazuko becomes a restorer of paintings so that she can preserve this art, so even though she'll probably never see Ken in the future, but she's like, hoping to find him again because they're so in love, and it's just this pure spiritual romantic love, but without the aspect of sex, because who knows if they'll ever meet again. And then Makoto is also like promising Chiaki, I will make sure that you can see this painting in the future. So she's planning to become a restorer of paintings just like her aunt, and that's the part of the romance that I'm like, it seems so frothy and romantic on the surface, but to me it's just kind of flimsy because okay, like you mentioned, the times in the story where she is starting to learn that this is a really serious subject, like the potential death of her classmate, that was like what really stood out to me in the film. That's what I like the most, where it's really dealing with the consequences and significance and, personal reflection, but then it still ends up on this note of, I found out I loved Chiaki from the time traveling. The time traveling adventures taught me one deep thing, and that is I am in love with boy. And that is the part that I, among other things, really have a gripe with, right? Now, speaking more overall about the film based on, reading the plot summary and then kind of reading this one person's analysis about it, it's just also one person's take on the internet, not to say that they're completely right or whatnot, but I do tend to agree with that. Okay, if I take into the account of Tsutsui's writing style according to them, because I have not read those novels and I don't believe that you have either, Lisa, but that it's not really about, obviously, it's not really about time traveling. Doi. Like, the science fiction mechanics aren't ever fully explained and there's sort of a lot floating in the air. It is more about the psychology of the characters, their development, their sort of growth and whatnot. And in this specific case, it's obviously, I think, about adolescence, because she starts off as this sort of like maybe annoying, kind of obnoxious girl, but through a series of first being frivolous with the ability and playing around, but then discovering like the more serious aspects and then also falling in love on the side. It's about like her growing up and whatever. And to me, I don't know, Lisa, I think I might just be really mean to young people. I think I kind of just,
no,
do I just
I don't think that's the case. I think it might be
kids?
it really might be the romance that's dragging it down ultimately.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more lenient towards this film than you. I know that it's his first real directorial debut with something that he wanted to make. It's not a franchise film like Digimon and One Piece.
Right.
It's his baby. And The Girl Who Leapt Through Time is, it's also his first leap up as a director and as a creative in a leadership position. So I'm kind of like, I'm a little bit lenient. He still had really great animation shots in that film. He was taking what he learned from Howl, which is adapting a book into
Right.
an animated film. Yeah, the romance sucks. I can't argue with that.
Okay, then I will also say I think my opinion can be split into two, because I forgot that this is actually his like first big directorial debut, not taking into account the franchise films. In what he did artistically is I think he did a great job. Like some of the shots, the composition, the way the movie like looks, and sort of those moments of urgency, like when she was about to hit the train from riding her bike down the slope, and she's just, you know, in immense anxiety and panic that she can't stop. Like all those sort of artistic things that you talked about, I think they're absolutely fantastic for like his first film. Like he really did a great job. And my sort of gripes are mostly with the plot line, which in a sense this is not to fault Hosoda, because he adapted a novel. So really, I just think I'm not a fan of the story from this novel. Like, it's probably not a book that I'll ever want to pick up based on the way that it sort of ends. And sort of like, I can kind of agree with some of the message, but yeah, I think that the romance does a lot of disservice to me. I think in general, also this subject of growing up and adolescence is one that I have a complicated relationship in terms of it being the centerpiece of a story. I think when it's done really well, I appreciate it a lot, because as you and I both know, basically my favorite genre is slice of life. And within slice of life, something like adolescence and growing up and self-reflection growth is like the centerpiece of a lot of slice of life series. But
I'm a sucker for it too.
Yes.
I have this one lingering thought.
Yes.
This film is very much like Makoto Shinkai's Your Name, actually. I feel like in the...
And that's probably why I hate it!
A fleeting romance. Yeah. So I was just thinking, would you watch Your Name or would you watch this film? Which one is better?
Oh, God. I kind of gave away my secret for whenever we do the Shinkai episode, because I like... I think I might say I hate Your Name. I really don't like that film. I think that if I have to rewatch something, I'd want to give Girl Who Leapt Through Time a chance again. Because hearing how you're also... there's some things you're not the biggest fan of either, but that you're become more favorable to it considering all the things you know about it now. I'd want to give it another chance and see it with sort of fresher eyes, because I have forgotten a lot. I watched this film quite a number of years ago. However, saying that, I don't know if I would actually ever like sit down and actually be able to do it, because after everything I just complained about and how it's like not for me. You're right though. It does kind of have parallels with Your Name, and I think it's just those types of stories that just don't do it for me, because we can both agree those films, they look fantastic. They are well done movies. But they do not do it for me plot-wise.
I'm the same way. I would also choose to watch The Girl Who Leapt Through Time simply out of spite for Your Name.
Yes!
I'm not going to sit down and watch that glitzy blockbuster top #1 Japanese movie hit.
Oh my God.
I'm too spiteful for that.
The best anime film
watch
ever.
Little Baby instead.
Yes. Absolutely.
As flawed as it is.
Yeah. But, okay, we spent a lot of time talking about his first film, but there's obviously a lot of other ones that Hosoda has directed afterwards that also, I think quite a number of anime fans, like, look kindly upon. So, was there any, I don't know, what makes most sense? Should we just do it in chronological order?
Okay, let's do it in chronological order, but that would be going into Summer Wars, but I honestly do not have much to say about that film.
Yeah, that one's a really quick one.
Wolf Children.
No, I agree. If there's anything else you want to add, of course, Lisa, but I'll just say my feelings for Summer Wars can be summed up as such. That the plot didn't really exist, wasn't interesting. The highlight of the film was definitely the hype kind of battle moment near the end. There was one slightly weird aspect with the main character. I don't know if it was the main character, but like a girl character and her having kind of like the hots for her uncle. That was sort of implied for like a hot second. I was like,
I remember that.
Which
Yeah.
all I can say is just, oh, anime being anime again.
I mean,
but
I think people have said that Summer Wars is just like his Digimon movie, so it's like he was redoing his Digimon movie after doing Girl Who Leapt Through Time, and he was like, oh, I'm just gonna do this, but better.
It's kind of true. Summer Wars is just like, oh yeah, there's some cool graphics, kind of hype, but like, that's it. It's just, it's fine.
I had forgotten about this, but there was still high school romance in that film, and it just did not hit again.
Hey, hot take. I this is for Hosoda, but probably a lot of other studios or directors we'll talk about in the future. My favorite is when they don't focus on the romance. I like my stories that is not mainly centered on adolescent romance. I don't know, hot take, it's just not my cup of tea.
There wasn't too much in this film. It was mostly like family oriented, and I mean that was really cool. Absolutely. Was cool. It was like a roller coaster. It was very entertaining, but it wasn't like, oh, this is my favorite. It's just sort of like
it's just kind of like it's just kind of like candy or chips with calories that don't hold a lot of nutrition, but like have a good time with it, you know. It's yummy.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, I actually
night.
didn't even remember that there was any high school romance. So like, I wouldn't even dock that as any marks. Like if it existed, then it was sort of like so kind of in the background. It didn't inhibit my enjoyment or anything. I wasn't like shoehorned like I felt with maybe Girl Who Leapt Through Time. And for Summer Wars, the overall prevailing feeling I got was definitely that it focused on family. And I did enjoy that. But yeah, you and I were both like, yeah, it was nice. It was good. And then that's kind of all we have to say to it. There's not really much else to say.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just itching to get to Wolf Children.
Let's go, because that also happens to be the one I would probably say is my favorite Hosoda film, and I think Lisa has more gripes with it. So we're kind of switching positions as we did with Girl Who Leapt Through Time, because you're more favorable than I was.
I mean, here's my thing. I know that Wolf Children is his best film. I think that's kind of
like you would say objectively.
Objectively, yes, and I understand why, and I appreciate it in that sense. But because of that, I do want to come down on it a little bit hard. And it's not because I don't respect the film. I respect the film. It's great. Family themes. I love it. The initial, initial scenes of that film are just so poignant. It's like the first 5 minutes of Up. Like, you can't not cry when you're moved.
Yeah. But with that out of the way, which is Lisa just saying she doesn't hate the film, she does still enjoy many aspects of it and can appreciate it. Ma'am, what are your main criticisms? Lay it on me.
Okay, I get it. The film is called Wolf Children, so eventually it's gonna focus on the children, but I didn't want it. I didn't want that. I was like, okay, we have this really engaging journey with a single mother as a protagonist who goes through so much. You see her struggles with childcare, this sort of interspecies mix of her children. She has even more struggles than the typical single mom would have. It's so compelling. Like, you never get to see this side in anime, I feel like. And it moved me so much. And to have the second part of the movie steer off of her, it just wasn't what I signed up for, guys. Like, there are so many coming of age, like, adolescent films, as we just talked about. Yeah. And I didn't hate Ame and Yuki's perspective, but it made me feel so bitter at the end. And I understand that the ending was supposed to be bittersweet, but I was more bitter than sweet. I was like 99 dark cocoa chocolate bar. Like, I was like, this isn't fair to her. This isn't fair to Hana, the mom. I'm mad. Like, what about her life? What about the things that she wants to do? You know, once the kids get older, she has maybe a little bit more independence as a human being rather than just a caretaker of her kids. But she's sort of subjected to the whims of her son, which I understand a lot of the audiences kind of come down on him for being selfish and stuff, and I kind of agree. To me, it's strange that Hosoda sought out to show this perfect Japanese mother, but her children don't really seem to respect her in that way. which is a little bit accurate for children in general, but at the same time, I'm kind of pissed about it. I don't know. Ugh, I'm sorry. It's just, to me, I have this thing where I'm like, Hana deserved better. And it's just, it felt like a male lens that, through Hosoda's male lens, that she was sort of forced to grin and bear it through all of these horrible situations. She never got to, date around in the second part of the movie.
That would
she
be
never
too
got
realistic.
To indulge. Like,
they're like, oh, fantasy.
I guess the male director was like, I don't want to show that. She's already dedicated to one man. I'm like, well, that's pretty presumptuous, but I don't know. Bad taste in my mouth. I wanted more for her. She's still a human. She still has stories to tell. It's not all about her kids. Ugh.
So I actually basically kind of agree with everything you've said. Again, it's still probably my favorite Hosoda film, and I love it despite all of those very, very valid criticisms. But you saying that it's kind of like a large male lens towards the idea of Hana's motherhood, especially in the second half. I was going to be like, to me, it felt more like a very East Asian lens. But then I was like, actually, there's layers to this. It is very much an East Asian lens. But that East Asian lens, which is also informed by the patriarchy. So it's like a sexist East Asian lens, because in East Asian culture, obviously I'm making generalizations and whatnot. And I am Chinese, but I don't speak for obviously all East Asian people. But just even within my own household and the way that my mother talked about motherhood and just my culture and those things that I know, wolf children, unrealistic in the part that there are children who are half wolves. But that aspect of when you're a mother, you give it all up. Your children are your everything. You live for them. Like, did you get divorced or your partner died or whatever? Like, there's no idea of dating around or finding another partner for you, because that's selfish. It's not about you. It's about your children. You do everything for your children. All your sacrifices are for them because they are why you live anymore. And that to me is such like an East Asian idea of parenthood.
Yeah. I mean, Hana is just flawless. Did she do anything wrong or selfish for herself in the film? I mean, she didn't have to, really, but I don't... Did she have development other than her children? I mean, I guess that's the point of the film, but... her whole family could also include, like, a new man or, like...
or a new lady!
Relationships with the villagers. Yeah, a new lady. Girl.
Yeah, that's sort of the unfortunate thing where I feel like in the first half of the film, you're absolutely right. I don't think I thought about this at the time I was watching, but in reflection, I so appreciated that we started off with the protagonist who was a single mother. Like, that is her sort of, her lens, her perspective, and that is not a position that is ever really, very rarely explored in the form of anime or manga. And I love that so much. She does feel like she's her own. She makes decisions. She thinks for herself. There are things that she struggles with, but you're right. As soon as sort of her hot wolf husband just kicks the bucket, it's all on the kids now, and she is just forced into a position where she has to be perfect with no question. She is never allowed a moment of human flaw where she wants to be a little selfish for herself. And even the most sort of magnanimous parents are still human. Like, it is so unrealistic to expect all of that hardship on her, and she's just never upset. She never wants to lash back. She just takes it all in. And yeah, her... Unfortunately, I just needed more. Sorry, I just needed more moments of her, like, screaming into a pillow or something. Yeah.
Like, I just needed her to be flawed, because parents are flawed. Not all parents are like Hana. Hana is actually quite perfect. I mean, you see, like, instances of her where maybe one of her kids like falls and like hurts themselves. It's like nothing she can really do because she's only one person. It's like you can't really fault her for that, but I don't know. She deserved to have more fuck ups in that film.
Yeah, she's because when such a character is presented so flawlessly, think about the undercurrent of what kind of cultural message you're trying to send across, which is what has already been a mainstay in, again, generalization, but in East Asian culture, which is that mothers should be selfless. They should do everything for their kids and not be worried about themselves. And that is, I think, kind of quite in contrast with how we might view similar people in Western culture. Like, I don't have numbers to back this up. It's just my feeling, right? Where I just imagine like Western families where, a parent might get divorced, and whenever it is, the parents feel that they can, they're emotionally ready to pursue it again, they might find more partners and create new families again with like step parents or new girlfriends or boyfriends or partners, whatever. And then like when I think about the East Asia side, and I'm just like, how many people are just, it's just expected like, okay, it's all for my kids. Like, there's no time to think about me and dating someone new and doing other things that would make my life easier. And it's just really unfortunate that it does have that sort of undertone within this film.
It's definitely a double-edged sword for the depiction of motherhood and single mothers in this case. Like, I think this film cast her in a really touching, emotional, beautiful light. I've cried so many times over this film. How touching it was to see her care for her children, that iconic snow scene, and yet at the same time, I feel like it also sort of contributes to this romanticization of mothers, the self-sacrificing mother, the decomplexity of her as a human. She's just a mother now. I don't know. Bad taste in my mouth.
Motherhood is her whole identity, is essentially kind of what it boils down to at the end. And you're right, on the one hand it seems so romantic and whatnot, but then you look at it a little closer and you're like, this is actually, it is kind of gross that she loses her autonomy as a human person with her own life and wishes and desires and frustrations and everything, and she just is mother.
But I also don't want to come down too hard on your favorite Hosoda film.
No, I mean, here's the thing. I still love this film despite all of those criticisms we've talked about, which I think are very legitimate. Like, they are valid criticisms onto this story. And it is one of those cases where it's like, both are true at the same time. I do dislike a lot of that kind of lens on it that we just discussed, and yet, like, my favorite part of the film is also just like, oh, she is such a great mother. That makes me so emo.
Yeah.
Like, I am a little frustrated at the kids because it's like, they just never seem to fully appreciate or understand her or whatever. And I'm like, that is really realistic. I think about, just myself in my own life and probably a lot of my friends. There's a lot of things we appreciate from our parents, but how many times did we also make their lives really hard when you're a little kid because you just don't understand and you could be kind of bratty at that age. But it's that soundtrack, man. You listen to the lyrics of some of those songs where it's just like talking about how like, you okay, I don't remember the exact lyrics, but it's probably, there were lines like, oh, I raised you and now you have to leave me, but like I'll always be in your heart. Like, just like that kind of tone, and like the OST and the little gentle guitar strumming and the montage of their family. It just gets me. I'm such a simp for crying over stories like that, the way it's presented.
Kills me.
Absolutely kills me.
How can you not fall for that?
It just, it gets you, man. And again, like the bittersweet aspect, there are multiple in this story, but one kind of big thing that they focus on towards the last half of the film is obviously the diverging of paths of her two children. They're raised by the same mother. They have the same father. Their environment growing up was the same. You know, they did so many things together growing up, and yet they choose fundamentally different paths. And maybe that's just as it is. Maybe you could also find metaphors in it and it's like a little deeper or whatever. But no matter how you view it, it is like such a bittersweet moment to think, right, her children are going to unfortunately leave her someday and might go on to live completely different paths, and she doesn't have a say over that because they're their own people. They're going to make their own decisions. And kind of the way that the son's perspective is shown, you can kind of read as like it is kind of selfish. I do think that the way he approaches us maybe not the best, but it still touches my heart a lot to think about that inevitable truth. I don't know why I talk about these things. I almost feel like, oh yes, me, I'm a mother. I feel that. It's like, bro, I'm like 22. I'm like, I don't even know if I want a kid, and even if I did, that would be way into the future. But it's just like, oh, I feel sucked in. I'm like, I feel like I'm Hannah right now, and I can understand like all the bittersweet feeling of seeing your kids go off.
I mean, but it's true though. Like most people can relate to that because they have a mother or maternal figure in their life, and they project onto Hana because of that. But at the same time, I'm also like, when I watch the ending, I'm like,
what about Hannah?
If I were to become a mom, this is not what I would want.
Right.
I'm like,
no,
God,
see,
that's horrible. I don't want to be her.
There's actually the part of the film that I'm like, the more I think about it, in retrospect now, I'm like, I actually have such mixed feelings about, because everything we just mentioned is precisely the reason that it gets us so emo and sobbing every time we watch it. And at the other side, you know, personally, for me, thinking about motherhood one day, there was a time in my life that I really wanted to become a mother, and, you know, not gonna lie, films such as this like did feed into that. But then you think about like what the reality is for the mother at the end of the film, and you're like, fudge, I don't want to be a mother if this is what her path is.
So true. The first half of the movie, my ovaries were stirring. I was like, oh my God, children. And then at the end, I'm like, I'm never having kids.
You're like,
Fuck
they're
these
dried
bitches.
up now. No eggs. They're just, because she sacrificed everything. And then what did she get in return? Her son is like, y'all, I'm yeeting out here. I will never see you again. And then, you know, her daughter's doing her own thing, and she's just left alone, no partner to speak of, no career, no, just nothing, no friends, no community.
Okay. What is the payoff for Hana for everything she went through?
The payoff
is her accepting that her children are getting older and more independent, and she should be satisfied with that.
Yeah, and that is like kind of like East culture. I'm sorry. Take a shot every time I say East Asian culture thing.
No, you're so valid.
It is. That's like, that is the angle. That is literally the story that was told to me growing up. That, oh, your greatest joy is to see that you did a good job raising your kids and they've gone out to live successful, happy, healthy, fulfilling lives. That is her reward. And we're basically told that you should be satisfied with that. But and you know what? Growing up, I was dragged into that romanticization. Like, because my mom said the same thing to me as well, you know? Like, she literally would say things like, you know, my greatest joy is, like, you two kids. Like, I've done everything for you guys, and I'm happy to see you guys doing well. So I was like, oh my God, like, listening to the way that my mom spoke to me, I'm like, I'm going to speak that way to my kid one day. And then, I don't know what it is, but as I've gotten older and I'm just seeing other perspectives of life and whatnot, I'm like, I don't know if I would be satisfied with just doing everything for your kids, and then they go off on their own and you're kind of left with nothing else. Like, is it selfish to be like, that doesn't feel like it's enough?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, here's my thing. Usually I wouldn't be like, challenge me on this opinion, but I'm like, I do want to be challenged about this. I want to love wolf children in the whole. not just the first part of the movie. But I still can't get over this feeling of bitterness that I have towards the second half. And if somebody can please give me a compelling critique as to why I should like that half, I am all ears.
Yeah. I would be interested here as well. Like, obviously, I do think I'm still a bit more favorable to Lisa, but I don't know if I have the coherent and intelligent language enough to present compelling arguments other than it make me emo, I cry.
Me too.
The end. Here's going to be another pattern for a lot of things we discuss. I kind of give more exceptions to things if it can get the emotional ringer out of me. If I cry, I'm like, ooh, that's some automatic 2 points for you.
That's how I know it's working.
Yeah. I will just say that this thing is like a logistical thing about motherhood. Would we feel kind of different if we weren't in our early 20s? Because if we imagine sort of the thing that happens in Wolf Children to us, I feel like based on where we are in our lives, we'd feel such a large amount of life being robbed from us. All the things that we want to do, such as date, just be with your partner longer first, like, you know, date without children being involved for a longer period of time, the freedom to travel, freedom to do whatever with your career and not be worried that someone has to depend on you financially, just like all that freedom. Like, would we feel differently if we were like, I don't know, in our 30s, maybe in our 40s, and we had experienced maybe a lot of the things that are attached to this period of our life that people expect us to experience and enjoy, and now that we have done it, we're like, I'm okay giving up a lot of these things for kids now because I don't care for it as much as I did when I was younger. I don't know. That's just rhetorical question. Just putting that out there. Who knows?
That's interesting. I'm not sure. It would also kind of depend on the context of, hypothetically, if we were mothers at that period of time. Right. What would the context of our motherhood be? You know, are our partners still involved in our lives? Do we have family support? Like, it really depends.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I have more thoughts about parenthood and stuff, but sometimes they're just, I can't even put into words. But anyway, we've spent a lot of time on Wolf Children, and we can kind of sum up both of our feelings in that it makes us cry every time. It really gets the heart clenching and sobbing over those bittersweet family themes, but there are a lot of criticisms that we have as well, especially with how they deal with Hannah, the mother's perspective. But
here's my thing, my closing thought on Wolf Children. I'll always watch the first half with you because it's a masterpiece. But when we hit the hour mark, I'm walking out of the room and you can watch the rest by yourself. I just get too bitter. I'm sorry.
Lisa wants rights for Hannah.
Hannah writes.
Hannah writes.
God damn. She puts herself out this whole movie.
Yeah.
Can we get her a beer? I don't
But the next film also about it does kind of feel like, in a way, a success for Wolf Children, because it's again about like, it's not like father-son exactly, but a sort of familial relationship with, oh goodness gracious, I cannot even remember their names. What are their names?
That's my problem with it. The Boy and the Beast can't fucking remember what happened in that movie. Sorry for my language. I'm getting a little heated again thinking about Hosoda. Man.
Okay, here's the thing. In terms of just ranking, like, my immediate feeling of how much I enjoyed or didn't enjoy his films after I'd seen it, like, Wolf Children was like number 1, and then The Boy and the Beast is number 2, probably because it also just like made me cry a lot, and if that has not become apparent already, that is what I'm a simp for, feeling things. But Boy and the Beast very much suffers from that, where I cannot remember character names. I can't remember. I just like vaguely know it's something about like, yes, little boy is mentored by Beast Man. There's like an alternate AU to the human world and whatever, but what the hell happens? Who knows? I read the summary and I'm still like, oh god, I can't picture this.
I had to refresh myself because I couldn't remember a single thing. but I still got very confused reading the Wikipedia summary because I just couldn't even remember what I had watched at the time. I couldn't visualize it. But then I kind of realized this is like the brother film to Wolf Children.
Yeah.
But the inverse, and the message is the same actually.
Yeah, like, it is the same. It is actually the exact same because I will say this from the plot summary I watched, like I just, excuse me, that I read, the father figure, like the mentor beast man, just sacrifices his life, and he's like, I give myself to you. I will live inside you now, and I will guide you, and everything will be for you, my son-like figure. It's literally the same message.
It's the same message, but the context is different.
Yes,
and
it's more fantastical.
When the beast is left alone at the end, where his son joins the human world and stuff, I'm like, well, okay, all right. At the end of Wolf Children, I'm like, what the fuck? What about Hana? You know? And I think the context there's maybe some gender roles, and also the fact that Hana thought she would be supported with her husband and she would have a full family to help her out.
Yeah.
And the beast's adoption of that boy was his own choice, whereas her pregnancies were kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they
different.
Just forgot to use a condom or something. Who knows?
And she was she was in her 20s. She was a college student, and this beast guy is like old.
Knocked her up. Yeah, it's different. I will say, you know, even though I just talked about like, forgetting a lot of things about The Boy and the Beast, I agree with you that it's similar, but there's that slight difference with their sort of motivations or the setup of how the family is created. And with The Boy and the Beast, I think I look upon it a little more favorably because, gosh, I should look up their names, right? Because it's hard to keep referring to them as the Beast Man mentorship guy.
I mean, it's the Boy and the Beast.
Okay, the Beast. Okay, it's the boy and also the Beast. Okay, so the Beast is Kumatetsu, and it's described that he kind of is apathetic. He doesn't really care about anything. He doesn't have any drive. And Ren is kind of the little boy, when he's introduced into his life, kind of turns that around. So in that way, they kind of give and receive from each other. Whereas in Wolf Children, it's kind of the only giving from Hannah. I don't know. She's really, I mean, okay, she's like some joy from, you know, raising her kids or whatever. But yeah, in The Boy and the Beast, I like that I liked that aspect of it. That it's a push and pull for both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's you're right. There's less self-sacrifice.
Yes.
Which balances their relationship in a unique way.
Yeah, because with the sort of like fighting aspects of it, they're also like, they fight for each other multiple times and like try to save each other. It's not just like, it's not just Kumatetsu sacrificing himself and putting himself in the face of danger and dying for Ren. Like, Ren actually does that for Kumatetsu at the end with the big fight scene or whatever, supposedly.
I have some questions for you though about this film, because I know that you said it was your second favorite film.
Yeah.
I know that you said you don't remember much, but I do want to ask you, like, one, I'm curious what scenes from this made you cry, and also what was your perspective on the romantic aspect of this film as well?
Right, so the romantic aspect, I was reading the plot, I was like, right, I think there was a girl for a hot second. I obviously don't remember enough about the romance that it makes me heated and angry like I did with the girl who left their time.
I remember. I hated it.
Oh, you hated it?
It was horrible. This is my least favorite Hosoda movie.
Oh,
unfortunately.
Gosh. You know what? If I watched it again, I bet I would hate it just as much as you. And if anything, it's probably a multitude of things I don't remember as much. Maybe partly that I just also was like, I don't care for this. So I just like was like, I do not perceive when it was on screen. I'm like, I don't care for this. It's not what I'm here for. I don't care. I'm not even going to remember it. And that because the grander focus was about the father-son like relationship between the two, the boy and the beast, obviously, that I could put more of my focus there and not care about the romance as much, because I very much feel like if I rewatched it, I would hate it just as much as you, given everything you know about me and what I tend to gripe about, you know?
Yeah.
But about, okay, if I could kind of
the tear-jerking moments,
if I can kind of sum up The Boy and the Beast, it's like, yeah, it's unfortunately actually kind of like a forgettable film. You're like, oh, what the heck happened? But I think it's just that the sort of message it kind of ended on, that this whole film was really just about like two misfits who found each other by some improbable rip in the time universe continuum, whatever, and they entered this sort of mentor apprentice like, but also morphs into a almost sort of father and son like relationship, because they both didn't have that. Like, Ren does reunite with his real life father at the end of the film, but throughout most of it, he's like an orphan child, and Kumatetsu doesn't have anybody. He doesn't have a successor. So I think it's that part for me where it's like, oh, these two misfit puzzle pieces who felt like they didn't belong anywhere found each other, form this relationship, love each other, make sacrifices for each other, and become one at the end. And it's also sort of, it's like, I don't know, maybe some people are like, it's cheap or whatever, but it's kind of beautiful that he didn't have to give up either side of him. Like, he returned to the human world, but not before Kumatetsu kind of sacrificed himself and then filled the void so he lives in him forever now, so he's able to still have him with him, like, Ren is still able to have Kumatetsu with him even as he returns to his human life again and leaves the Beast Kingdom. So, I don't know. It's like, it is kind of like weird because I found it kind of forgettable, but I just remember all of those added up towards the end of the film. I was like, I can't even read the ending credits. My eyes are blurred from the tears. Their beautiful found family relationship. I
was gonna say found family. Like,
found
I
family.
get it.
Found family.
It slaps like no other.
Yeah.
More so than biological family.
Oh my god, biological family is no contest for found family. Like, found family just hits in a way like no other. Because it's, I don't know, I think found family has that aspect of you didn't have to choose each other, but that's why it's so much more meaningful, because in the end you did. But yeah, that is The Boy and the Beast from Winnie's perspective.
It is interesting that Hosoda's last two, like, most recent films are technically his most successful ones. Like, yeah. Boy and the Beast was very financially successful, and Mirai, which is his most recent release, was nominated for an Academy Award.
Oh my god!
It lost to Spider-Verse, kind of deservedly
for sure. Okay, but you know what? It's interesting that you kind of comment about his, like, last couple of films being the most successful. I realized, I think, despite a lot of the criticisms we've been giving to his work, that I still generally look favorably upon him as a director, and I have high hopes for what he has coming out in the future, because he gives a lot of screen time to stories that revolve around found family, about biological family, just family in general. Like, you know, it's kind of funny because some of our biggest criticisms are his, like, shoehorn flimsy romances. We don't care for that. So when he doesn't do that, when he puts more focus on those platonic bonds, that's when I think he really shines, when his work is really brilliant on screen, and I hope that he continues to do that. However, the most recent announced film is Belle, based on Beauty and the Beast, so I'm like, oh yeah, maybe he's starting to be like, I've done too much family stuff, it's time to do some romance again, and one for the furries.
Well, okay, you say all that romance tends to be kind of the weakness of his films, and then family is the strong point of his films, but Mirai was truly family.
Yeah.
And yet, it was just
not good.
Okay. I look a little on it a little bit more favorably after doing some research. I saw a quote that described this film as his victory run or his flex, where he takes everything that he's learned from his past few films, where he focuses on motherhood, on fatherhood, and this film kind of goes through all of the family members in a way. Like,
yes, it does. It does.
You see the this kid's how do I describe? It's just every single family member is sort of accounted for. Like, you see the dog's perspective, you see the grandpa's perspective, the grandmother's perspective. It's cool and it's interesting, and there's some really valuable pieces in that film, like the grandfather's perspective with the Hiroshima backdrop and the context of the war. I thought that was just so incredible, and awesome. And then I was just kind of like, I got lost at the end. I was confused. I was lost just like the little kid at the train station.
I'm going to say something really shameful to precede all of my hopefully much more intelligent thoughts about this film. But the highlight for me was that hot grandpa. Not him as a grandpa, because we never see him in his old age, but the flashback when he's just a young hunk and trying to win over the grandma with his little race. I'm like, oh my lord, you are smexy. You're smexy as hell. This is a highlight of the film for Winnie.
This is just like the precedence for Winnie standing old men in anime all the time.
I stand old men across the board, even when they're young. As long as they know they become old, I stand them. But okay, I'm very, very glad that you gave that kind of context, because look, I don't hate Mirai. Like, I'm not like, I hate this, it was such a failure. I generally, to me, it's just like, it's just okay. But I do look upon it a little more favorably, given what you said, that he was trying to rope in all these things that he'd done in the past and create a work that honors all of it. And for me, the part that I don't look favorably upon is, I appreciate that so much in concept, and I don't think he landed the mark. I think he you know, depending on who you talk about, maybe some people think he missed it a lot. Maybe some people thought it was just kind of like off to the side. I'm not sure exactly where I land upon it, because I can't remember so much of the stuff that happens. But
well, here's the thing. I mean, Winnie and I have discussed this so many times. Hosoda has a great hook.
Always.
He crafts the best hooks of all time. The first, 20 minutes of his films are so good every time. But his landings are quite questionable.
It's we made this analogy, right? Where he's a sprinter that wants to do a marathon, and he's just not well equipped to do that yet. So we're like, I don't know, get on a co-director. Yeah, story-wise. Look, there's no I visually, what happens, it is always a joy to watch his films. Like, that is not something that we've been having hot takes about. Like, I love watching them. It is mostly the story that we're picking apart. But yeah, I don't know, maybe have a co-director to make your plot a little more coherent. It always feels like there's 10 moving parts, and then you kind of try to string together, and he is able to string it together, but it doesn't always have the lasting emotional impact I think he wants it to have, especially with something like Mirai. I think that's a great example of, he probably meant to have a really punch you in the face, emotion, family, and it didn't land for me.
So I think what I read is that The Boy and the Beast was his first film, and then going for writing independently and not having support behind that. So this is truly, truly his work. And then sorry, I got distracted by my dad knocking on my door.
This is a very chaotic episode, y'all.
I'm sorry. Yeah, truly. And then my phone going off in the beginning as well. Boy and the Beast and Mirai are really, truly his projects, and really, truly him in his writing. And it doesn't feel like it benefits from it.
Yeah.
But I get it first stabs. You know, let's see if he can evolve a little bit more.
And you know what?
Point.
And like I said, like I did look very favorably upon Boy and the Beast when I finished it. I still think I really like it. I think even though reviewing the plot, I'm still like, I don't remember a lot of these things, but kind of talking about it did make me realize why I did appreciate it in the end, sort of like that puzzle analogy I gave you. For the fact that the Boy and the Beast and Mirai are truly his own, I still think they're generally good. Like, he's doing a good job, and if this is what it's like in the beginning, then there's only room for improvement, right? That is what I'm so hopeful about. I think with Mirai, his angle, which I think he wanted to be a great sort of how would you say, the draw, the benefit of it, words, like he wanted the film to benefit from every family member's perspective kind of being shown. But I think it kind of diluted it that he did that. In the end, I sort of was like, who am I attached to other than the hot grandpa? Like, I just, who do I care about? Like, it's just, see a little bit from everyone. And I don't know if I felt this at the time that I watched it, but knowing my history and how I feel about such protagonists, maybe there's a part of me that was also like, we have another like young protagonist who's kind of obnoxious. He's like, no
he's a toddler, Winnie. He's literally a toddler.
No, does he get older? Because he's all like, he's like a little elementary school kid, right? Because his sister Mirai gets bored, and he's like, no one loves me anymore.
I mean, that is.
I don't think that really bothered me. That does make sense. That's what kids do.
he is very much a toddler, and he is depicted in a toddler-like way. But yeah, it's still kind of like
the part that I was sort of like, obviously there's a little bit of the fantastical element with, I guess the closest term is time travel, right? Because it's time travel. But what was there any point for Yuko to be like, I am dog, I am also human, hee like, and it's not like, I'm not saying it's a criticism like it's horrible, but I was just like, is this adding a fantastical element just for the sake of adding a fantastical element?
I think so. And it's like, I understood the perspective that they were trying to show, but also the visuals are kind of chaotic and weird.
Okay. Here's another thing I think we can say about Mirai generally, right? Is that Hosoda wanted to kind of tie in so many things that the film doesn't have a strong identity. Like, the Boy and the Beast, it's, you know, there's beast people, there's the beast kingdom, there's that whole aspect. Wolf children, like, there are, like, werewolves in our universe, and we have these kids who are half wolf blood. And Summer Wars is focusing on this sort of digital battling whatever platform, and Girl Who Leapt Through Time is about time travel. There's a definable thing that adds a fantastical element to all these stories. And with Mirai, it's like, what's this going on? Like, what's like the definable thing? And
they could have pressed more into the cultural and historical angle, I felt like, because not only was there references to the Hiroshima stuff, but also there were scenes with Hinamatsuri, and it was his most Japanese-y film.
Yes,
I kind of like that. I like that. If he had pushed that more, I felt like it would be a little bit more successful in its execution.
Yeah, again, by no means do I hate Mirai. I think it's still like it's still fairly good. But like you said, there's just so many aspects of it that we wished he pushed further. And to me, it's like he gave us a sampler plate of a whole variety of appetizers, but I just wanted a full-on meal, like one dish. You didn't have to give me like just a cheese board with 30 different cheeses.
Wait, so I wanted to know, do you remember the primary like climax of the film at the train station area?
I actually don't remember. So I read the plot summary so I could refresh my memory, and I'm like, okay, this sounds... It's
they
weird.
did it in a completely different art style. If you can remember.
I don't remember.
It was like, I think there were like cutout puppets and stuff, and like the train station guy that was there was like a puppet style guy talking to Kun, the toddler protagonist, and it was very, very abstract and very strange, and I didn't quite understand how I was supposed to resolve his problems. It was experimental.
But you're like, why? But for what
like,
reason? It didn't hit in a way that you're like, it's so cool you did it that way. And there will be things that we'll discuss later on in the pod.
Tied to the aesthetic of the film. Like, it was a totally different style. I was like, what? Am I watching a different movie?
So even though I don't remember that, hearing you talk about it, that is very much like, it sounds strange, and there wasn't like a thematic reason for it. And because I was just gonna say, there are times when there's an art style change in series and it makes sense and we can really appreciate it. Like, I haven't finished Madoka and I don't know if I'll love Madoka, but that just was like a top example in my head where the witch monsters are in a completely different art style, and it makes sense. It serves a sort of thematic purpose. But yeah, I don't know what it is for Mirai. And I remembered another thing, like theme-wise, for the overall atmosphere of the movie that I think was kind of a disappointment to me, that has to deal with expectations. Because I'm looking at his filmography, and the two he did beforehand are Wolf Children and The Boy and the Beast, that are very much family, like family connection and bonds, and you're gonna cry at the end because, oh my god, my parents sacrificed so much for me, sort of tone, right? And then with Mirai, when you're watching the trailer and knowing it's about like, it's about his sister and the older brother and this time travel aspect or whatever, but I think there was that unintended consequence that I was prepped, given the setup, who the main characters were going to be, and his previous two films, to feel that it was again going to have that heavy family theme, that the type that would make me sob at the end, because it's like, the family bonds are so strong and they love each other and they make sacrifices and they help each other improve or whatever. But the ending of Mirai is more like, okay, fine, she is my sister, I accept it now. So it's like, it doesn't hit as hard.
It's interesting because what Hosoda has brought to the table with family themes and how he evolves it, it's really interesting, but I don't think he's going to keep going on that path, judging by his new trailer for Belle.
Yeah.
It looks to be more along the lines of Summer Wars, which I'm not sure how to feel about that. I feel like he has some successful stuff going on with exploring family and going back to Summer Wars. I mean, maybe he has something really great planned.
I wonder if he's like, that's going to be beating a dead horse if I keep doing things about family. That's boring. Like, I need to do something different, which in and of itself, you're like, that kind of makes sense, I guess, a director not wanting to do the same thing all the time. But what I'm upset about is it is such an unequal standard and expectation, because we never feel that way about like romance, about maybe shonen hype tournament arc style thing. People are never like, those things, we have too much of them, you have to do something different. But maybe that's the case with family, where it's like, oh no, I can't keep doing things with family themes because then it'll get boring and unoriginal and people won't care. And but that's not the case with other things. And I think that's what I'm upset about, because I've had enough stories about heterosexual romance. It's not interesting to me. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally in support of directors repeating the same themes. It's what made Bong Joon-ho so great, is that all of his movies are about class disparity.
Oh my
God.
God.
That's what made Parasite.
Yeah, and that
all of that experience.
So I unfortunately haven't seen that director's earlier works, but as every other person under the sun did, I watched Parasite, and that was a phenomenal film. I mean, this episode isn't about that, but just a quick tidbit in there. You should watch Parasite if you haven't already. But yeah, so Hosoda making Belle as his next feature film, which is going to be inspired by the Beauty and the Beast. I'm just like, why? I don't care about the Beauty and the Beast. Why is that your source material? You can do a whole bunch of different things to spice it up and make it different, but it's like, I am not excited about that as inspiration. I don't know how you feel about it, Lisa, but when I saw the trailer, I was kind of like, a little disappointed.
I'm not either, and I watched the trailer. Nothing seemed to really grab me.
Yeah.
And also, it seems like he's integrating 3D into this film as well, which I never want to come down hard on that, but I'm like, okay.
Yeah. You know, is Hosoda also like a furry? You got the Boy and the Beast. You got
my God,
wolf children.
that's like such a
now
common
you got
comment. Yeah. People have been like, oh, he's such a furry, lol. I don't want to watch another furry film from him. I kind of feel bad.
I mean, he does keep making things that makes it hard for people to hold their tongue about that, because it's always about like wolf like beasts. They're all wolves. Like he's a
I'm
very
not gonna lie,
specific type of furry.
Some of the like older male like wolf people, they're pretty smexy.
We can say that on this podcast.
I mean, they're like attractive. I don't know what else to say.
Listen, I said that I like old men characters in anime. What else can't be said on this podcast? I'm gonna give more context to that, by the way. There's at some other point.
We were gonna record a Sangatsu episode, but then we did this Hosoda episode. I feel like we killed it, Winnie. We went through all of the
We did.
songs.
And you know what? We presented a lot of different sides because we're not one note with this. Like, there's a lot of things we like about his stuff, and there's a lot of things we don't like. And even within specific films, there are ones where you are more favorable towards, there are ones that I'm more favorable towards. So I hope that anybody listening, no matter where you stand, you're able to kind of pick out some things that you agree with, and also some things that you don't, which is also totally great and fine. Like, we love a diversity of opinions and people having different experiences, even watching the same film that we did.
Absolutely. I have so much respect for Hosoda. Like, genuinely, the trajectory of his career is amazing to me. The fact that he would walk away from Howl's Moving Castle, bro. That is crazy.
Ghibli? He walked away from Ghibli.
The people who inspired him to make anime, he walked away from that.
Like, oh my God, like, who's bad boy number one? It's Hosoda. He coming in with black sunglasses and like a backwards cap, dropping his mic. Holy cow. I so much respect for him. And like I said earlier, I have so much optimism for the future of his career. I think that a lot of the stuff he's done in the past has been great. There's a lot of promise, and yeah, like this bad boy walking away from Miyazaki. What a G. Just so
putting on his sunglasses, doing his own thing.
And yeah, we hope to see many more things from him and his team, and I'm sure that there will be things that he makes in the future that we'll still really enjoy, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for listening in. Please consider supporting this podcast wherever it may show up, whatever medium it may show up as. YouTube, I don't know. But let us know your 2 cents about Hosoda's work, and if you want to fight me about wolf children, my Twitter handle is MidoriField. I'm just kidding.
No, I think like Lisa said, she really wants to hear it. If you're someone who can give a very compelling argument for why the second half of that film is in fact amazing, Lisa wants to hear it. Lisa wants to know. She's open to changing her opinion if you can smart your way into her brain.
Genuinely, I am. All right, y'all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.